their friends to sign, and I got in that year. They just didn't know what they were missing. Mitch, I go by Mitch, my name's Mitchell. Grew up as Mick. If anybody calls me Mickey, I know they know me a long time. Whatever. So I've got 40 years into our local, but I just worked about 25. Then went to UAW up at Rolls Royce as a pipe fitter in '97. Then the planes crashed in New York, and they gave them an excuse to lay off. And that's when I took the severance check and went back to school and got my bachelor's and master's in teacher's education and theology, and started teaching public school up in Dallas. I've also taught 7 years in an apprenticeship because, as I'll explain later, you can earn an associate degree through your apprenticeship, your 5-year apprenticeship through Ivy Tech in construction, Pipefitters. So I taught those classes for 7 years. They hated them. Tried to teach big construction workers how to act on the job. Interpersonal communications was not something they wanted to learn. But I had to teach it anyway. One guy told me one night, said, they must really hate you to make you teach this class. But I did it for 7 years. I also taught personal finance, which is great. You wouldn't believe the men and women at that age that don't know how to figure a checkbook or to go to an ATM machine. It's just amazing. Labor history, taught labor history and technical writing. Once the pandemic came, that's time I quit that. So, went to school 7 years, 10 years. I subbed out here at 3 high schools for 10 years. I have a daughter, she works here, and her husband, James, and 2 grandkids. Now, the pipe fitters, do you know what a pipe fitter is? Raise your hand if you have no idea what a pipe fitter is. Most people don't. I didn't realize it until I got in. Instead of a pipe fitter, I didn't know what a pipe fitter is. Any pipe you see, that's a pipe fitter put that in, unless it's plumbing. Plumbers work on potable water, which is drinkable water, gray water, which is water that goes into septic, then just urine. Black water, you can know what that is. That's what the plumbers work with. They work with copper. They'll usually work alone on a job, because 157 works with industrial plumbing, industrial pipe fitting. Pipe fitters work as a team. They usually be a welder, unless it's screw pipe. They usually be a welder and pipe fitter to work with them. They'll team them up in pairs. Sometimes we say he pimps for a welder. Now that's construction talk, but that's how a pipe fitter would understand. Or he scratches welds. Because a pipe fitter is teamed up with a welder will do the fabrication. They'll figure out the cuts, the angles, the pipe, and if you name any kind of pipe, that's what we work with. Anything, glass pipe, steel pipe, copper pipe, any kind of pipe. We got a pipe fitter sitting right there out of 157. He knows what I'm talking about. So anything you see in a powerhouse, a factory, anything that's the money is supplied by the state or the federal, is usually going to go union. And that's because they'll have what's called a prevailing wage in Indiana. So no matter who they hire on that job, they have to hire the wage that is prevalent in that area. And it's our wage. What do you think our scale's up to now? An hour. Anybody want to guess?
75.
That's pretty high. It's $55 an hour. It was 18 an hour when I got in. I worked with guys, old timers, that's what I am now, that were working for $7 to $8 an hour. But by the time I got in '83, it was up to $18 an hour. That was big money. But we started 45% of the scale as a first-year apprentice. So I started about $5, $6 an hour. But it's up to $55 an hour. The total package now is about $75 to $80. That's including your insurance. There's no benefits as far as paid vacation, paid holidays. That doesn't exist. Your benefits are your wages. You gotta be I'm not going to say a special person, but to not know where you're going to work, to not know how long that job's gonna last, to not know who you're gonna be working with, not know if you're inside or outside, what kind of clothes to wear, how long that job's gonna last. It takes a special kind of person to live that kind of life. You have to accept it, to travel. A lot of guys will have a camper hooked on the back of the truck. They'll go and they'll park it in a parking lot or a campsite. They'll work on that job because that job is maybe working 7/12s. They'll bring home a $4,000 or $5,000 a week check. So then instead of staying in a motel, if you have a camper, you stay in a camper. So it takes a special person to put up with that.
Did you say that includes your health insurance?
The total package would be about $75 an hour. That includes health insurance.
That's with the health.
And they put in double what you put in. The contractors did.
And does that normally cover you and the family?
You mean, is it enough?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for all the family.
That's good.
All your siblings, any of your dependents, that covers, yeah. And until you don't appreciate that until you retire. After you retire, your social security and your pensions and your health insurance, that's when you really appreciate that. Because I think we pay $750 instead of $5,000, you know. Yeah, it's always good. Of course, when I got in, we had a card for prescription, $2 a prescription, no matter what. Still, I pay about $30, and you know, I'm 71, so I got a whole thing of pills that I got to sort out every day, dump them out, take this, so I could be paying thousands, and I pay $30 so it's still good insurance. We're under the umbrella of AFL-CIO, American Federation of Labor. Did I get a good enough job on what a pipe fitter is? Because, you know, it's hard to explain that unless you're there doing it. But as long as you understand that every kind of pipe there is, that's what pipe fitters work on.
You have to dig the hole to get to.
Oh, heck no. I've even worked on jobs where the backhoe will dig the hole, the trench, you hook it onto the pipe, they'll lift it up and set it exactly where you want it. Now, that's not always the case, but if you got a good backhoe operator and a laborer that's there with a shovel to get the fall, it's a pretty groovy job. But there's other jobs where we don't dig because that's called lines of demarcation. If you cross what a laborer should be doing, digging, they'll find out about it and you're off the job, or you'll pay some kind of penalty. You don't do other crafts work. Now we're talking, not everybody here may be pro-union, pro-organized labor. If you're not, your opinion has probably been molded by UAW, Teamsters, who else would that be? Teachers Union. Take care of the deadbeats, right? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
I've seen it. When I was at UAW, I've seen guys steal, get fired. The next contract negotiation, they get them back on the job because they trade something. You don't see that in the building trades. Building trades are pipe fitters, plumbers, electricians, carpenters. What else we got? Insulators, painters, HVAC. That's the building trades. You don't have that. Protect the deadbeat in building trades. If you're out there and you're not doing the job, you're gone and there's a guy coming out of the hall, or gal, take your place the next day. Now, of course, some jobs are more strict than others, but on the whole, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're gone. Isn't that right? Thank God I've never been gone.
Does each job have a supervisor from your union?
The bylaws, our laws say you have to have, the foremans are from our local. The contractor, wherever they're from, can have one supervisor, and they're usually the superintendent of the job. They can have one member of their local come on that job. But anything under the supervisor, like area foremans, general foremans, they all have to be out of our role. Good question. AFL-CIO, AFL stands for American Federation of Labor. That encompasses the building trades, the CIO, Committee for Industrial Organization, that's factory workers. I don't mean this literally, but it's unskilled workers. The AFL would be skilled workers. Factory workers, they don't even though they have skills, they're members of the CIO because they're not considered skilled workers. Does everybody understand that? Not derogatory, that's just the way they're split up. But that's what umbrella we're under as far as union pipefitters. This is our United Association of Plumbers and Pipefitters of the United States and Canada. We're also affiliated with all the unions in Canada. There's over 200 locals in the United States and Canada. Pipeliners and apprentices are always also included in that. Pipeliners, they're a different breed. They're out of our local too, but like the Alaska pipeline, I'm sure you've all heard of that. And the ones that they're trying to debate whether to have now or not, those are pipeliners. They go out there and stay for 6 months and make thousands and thousands of dollars. And they'll weld big pipe over mountains, through rivers. I never wanted to be a pipeliner. Hierarchy, FLCIO, then the UA, and then your local unions. As far as our local, the hierarchy, we have a business manager. He's the boss, he or she. I've never had a female business manager, but one of these days, it could happen. We have business agents. They take care of finding the jobs, sending people out on those jobs. Contractor will call into our hall. The business agent will take that call. Now, years ago, if you were tight with the business agent, you'd go out on a job, no matter when you were laid off. That was a problem for years. Then about 20 years ago, they changed that to a list. When a contractor calls in, needs like 20, like that Lily's job up at Lebanon. That isn't Lebanon? No. They might say we need 50 plumbers. Well, he'll get on the phone and look at that list, who was laid off first, then on the bench. If you're sitting on the bench, you're laid off waiting to get out to work. Who's been there the longest, that's who gets first dibs at that job. If they want it, if you get on the phone, they're going up the list, which is fair. But for years, it wasn't like that. Then you have the field reps, which goes down to the areas. There's one field representative in Lafayette, because we took over 240, which I'll discuss, Lafayette local. There used to be one in Danville, but they pulled that away. There's one down in Terre Haute. There used to be one in Robinson, but they pretty much consolidated all that down to Terre Haute and Lafayette. This picture of the Union Hall back in the 50s, I put that up there because this was the grand opening. This was a big deal. It's over on North 13th Street. Is anybody familiar with Terre Haute? It's on North 13th. It's gone now. But I put that up there just to start the history because that was a really important part of our history in that building right there. Let me go back. Where's this little light works? Look at that. I couldn't get that to work at home. This, and I got to shake, so I have to show you that. That plaque right there is this here. And it sat outside our welding shop on Milner Avenue, where we are now, for 45 years. On a stand, I talked to get that thing moved in to the meeting hall out of the weather. I finally got it talked into about 5 years ago. So now it's parked in the corner in our meeting hall. It's hard to sway some of these people. When they get things in their head, they've done it this way for so long, but I'm persistent. This is where the headquarters started in 157. This is on Wabash Avenue in Terre Haute, back in 1896. And we'll do that. Go back. This building right here that says Terre Haute Beer, that was our union hall. The top floor right there. And back in here is nothing but prairie. This is the Holman building right here. Familiar with that? So this was the building after our local lost their charter. They were chartered in 1894, but at the time you had to have a minimum number of members or you lose your charter. so they lost their charter. And the minimum was 7. It had 7 men, or at the time, women were unheard of in the trade. But so you had to have 7 men. They got down below 7, they pulled their charter. But in 1896, they got it back. So we judge everything and date everything from 1896, because there for 2 years, they remained a union as far as the men were still together and having meetings, but they weren't chartered from the UN. Then they got their charter back. This is the building now, the whole of the building's there, back in 2021. We had our 125-year anniversary in 2021. They had a 100-year anniversary in that had been, well, we've been 70, help me, 2,596. Yeah, to be 1996 when they had 100. It was a big deal. We rented the home and there's on the state ISU campus, big, beautiful, tuxedos, and they made a big deal out of it. 100 years. We had 125. It wasn't quite that big a deal, but we celebrated it. These are the different locations where our union has wound up. I'm not going to list all this, but there's a lot of places that they moved over the last 148 years. This is our main office down in Sealyville.
Did some of those address changes because you got kicked out?
Don't know. Some of them are just office space instead of the hall.
You realize I'm teasing you.
Well, that's a good question, because, you know, there's some things that we don't want to talk about as far as the officers did, and, you know, I don't want to know all of it, but it's very possible, yeah. But some of them are just office space. This is, I put this in here because, well, for one thing, it's part of our complex down there, but this, all this up here, retired guys did that. Now there's nothing there. It's just grass. If there's not people to take care of things, it's going to go by the wayside. And that's what happened. This was clear back in the 90s. So now it's just grass. And it's a shame because it was beautiful. But the building still looks the same. Now, mergers. We took in Local 156 in 1952. We took in Lafayette local, well, Frankfurt merged into Lafayette local in 75, or in 47. Then we took in 240 in 75. We took in 293 down to Illinois in 94. And there's two, and that's beneficial for both. Those are being merged with and merged into. It opens up a lot of territory for members of the smaller local. Now they've got all this territory they can work in. And from the local, they've got this territory that local had, and now they can send their men or women to that local. Crawfordsville, 156. Now, it might get confusing on the dates and the numbers of the locals. We're 157, they were 156. That doesn't, but they were, they started in 38, we started in 1896. What happens when a local dissolves for one reason or another, they lose that number, they lose the charter. That number is then reassigned to another local that materializes, and they'll give them that number. So somewhere in between there, somehow, Crawfordsville got that 156. It used to belong to someone else. We at 157, that number belonged to somebody else, but I've never found out who it was. We have a United Association in Annapolis, Maryland, used to be in DC. They're not that great as far as looking things up for you. They've got their own archives, but you call and you ask for this. I'll get into that in a little bit. But that's the relationship between 56 and 57. They're not that close together.
How many members, did you say how many members 156 had in it?
Well, when they merged, it had 17.
17
Yeah. But I've got a list and for you to pick up.
It's in their handouts.
Good. Of the members. And the thing is, I'll show you some cards there in a minute. If you worked in another local back then, you had to clear into that local. You had to become a member of that local. And I'll show you the cards. You had a card you had to fill out with your information. And then if they accepted you to work in that jurisdiction here in Crawfordsville, then you could get in that union temporarily, just on that job. So I've got more than 17 names there. I've got also the cards that I found of members that cleared into the local to work in Crawfordsville at that time. So that's why. And we'll get into that here a little bit too. They had 3 different locations. One of them's here on top of that where they have the playhouse. What'd you say the name of that was?
Vanity.
Yeah, upstairs. That was one of their halls. And I went up there one day, they let me in there, and they took me up there to see if there was any remnants of anything. There's nothing to tell you, that was a union hall. They were also, right here, were Creek's Jewelry. Beside there, there's a doorway, you probably know this, right there. That says 107 on one side, 109 on the other side. So 109 is where they were, upstairs. And here, you know where this building is, there was a stairway. I have to use 2 hands to steady myself. You'll see when I'm trimming my beard. So take a hunk out. So, I took this picture, it's from the 1800s, but they were upstairs in one of these floors here. So that's the 3 locations for Local 156. This is a letter that the members wrote to the UA asking to be taken into a larger union with a field officer. There's in a recent meeting, the membership of Local 156, a number of members indicated that they would like to consolidate this local with a larger local. Well, they asked permission, and then a letter was sent back. Crazy thing. Oh, and this was the president of the UA at the time. How am I doing on time?
It's about 27 after.
Well, I got that, but what about?
You got.
I got a lot more building.
Yeah, you got.
I need to know if I need to cut it short.
Yeah, you got about 25 minutes.
Okay, all right. Durkin was his name, and he's being sworn in by you know who. He was president when I was born. He was sworn in as Eisenhower's Secretary of Labor. But he was the UA president at the time, the United Association of Pipefitters and Plumbers. He took him out of there and made him the Secretary of Labor. A few months later, he got mad because they weren't doing what they told him they would do, so he drug up. And we call that dragging up going. You quit a job, you drag up. If you're getting ready to quit a job, you can see that drag up dust on the horizon. And the next day, give him a move. So he drug up and he went back to UA. The next 2 letters are confirming that they will be accepted into 157. 157 was chosen by the UA to merge. At the time, they had a balance of $803.25. Now you've seen this where they'll say how much something was worth at the time, 100 years ago, how much it'd be worth now in cash. Well, I went on one of those online, calculator. It says it'd be $8,000, almost $9,000, or $8,084. A local with 17 members. Now, I'm leery of that. I don't know why they'd have a coffle of $8,000, but I wasn't there. But that's what the calculator showed. And this is a picture of Vinegar Building. You've probably seen that. We did not work on that because that was before the local was formed. I guess 1919, something like that.
That's the life insurance building here. Vinegar Building.
Yeah, the one they're working on now.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah, it's supposed to, I think they're doing an open house in the first part of June.
Oh, they are. Oh, I see that.
Yeah,
How much of it did they keep of the old architecture inside?
I have no idea.
Well, I went in there to the ground floor and ate at that little cafeteria there. When I was working at Pipefitters across the road in the 70s. Oh, that was good food. That lady did. All right, a charter. Does anybody know what a charter is? Do I need to explain that? That is, has 3 definitions: a written grant or guarantee of rights. Now, this is popular because of charter schools nowadays. Guarantee of rights, franchise, privileges from the sovereign power of the state of the county. What we were interested in would be a written instrument from authorities of a society creating a lodge or a branch. That's what a charter is. That's a picture of our charter, Local 157. It was granted in 1896. These are the cards I talked about that you have to use, fill out to clear into a local at that time in the early 1900s. And that's not. Get back here. There. These, I found them, and they're written on the bottom, charter member. And that helps me find out the date, July 21st, or 1938. That's when Local 156 started. That date, because those charter members signed and created that union on that date. On the backside, it has, I couldn't find them today when I was down in the archives room, and then I drove home and I knew where they were, I just didn't look there. But on the backside, it tells the personal information, their age, what their wife's name, their kids, where they were born, this and that. This is the list that you have in your packet. These names and addresses. If you recognize any names there as an ancestor or a neighbor's ancestor, somebody, if I could find something else, because there's some, I can't find the charter, I can't find the stamp, which looks like this. This is used on these cards to stamp that, to give the approval of that local. This is the UA stamp I have here. I can't find that. The UA archives in Annapolis says you had, no, we don't have that. So I have a letter that says that they sent them those things from 156, the signed letter. They sent them all that, but I'm told they don't have it. So, haven't found that. Now, some of these are interesting. One of them, I saw, where is it? Lived above the Strand, right there. There was apartments above the Strand. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he lived there. This gives their address, when they lived, their age, and when they put it into the local. So if you have that, and you can if you can help me in any way to get any information, 156.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
You might write an article and send it to the local newspapers and, you know, explaining what you're, you know, trying to do. And maybe include these names.
Well, I put it on Facebook several times, a letter,
Well,
exactly, but
I mean,
I don't get the
this-
paper, because I don't know how many people, because it's just.
Well, there's a lot of people in town that get the paper,
Are there still a lot of people that get the Journal Review?
Yeah,
I look at the old bits
I mean-
online, that's all I look at, you know?
I mean, personally, I don't get it, I live, you know, way out of town,
And they charge an arm and a leg.
but,
You know how much an obituary costs now, up in Annapolis? $500-600?
yeah.
Yeah, for a short obituary.
But,
So I haven't, that's a good idea.
yeah,
But-
it helps get the word out there, cause I mean, we use it for our master gardeners to promote our
Oh,
plant
yeah.
sale and other things. And they're real good about putting special things like that on the front page.
So they may give it cut in the price.
There is no
There
price,
is no
it's
price.
free.
Really?
But you're not a property.
Well, I'll check that out this week.
Yeah, because it's the.
I'm not retired.
It's the
I
Journal
love it.
Review
You gotta
and,
love retirement.
and the
Oh my
paper.
God.
You
I'll
would
do
just-
that.
Yeah,
You would
it's
just send it
both
to-
of them.
Yeah,
You send it to Tina McGrady, the editor,
Yeah,
and
or,
normally they would go.
yeah, Tina McGrady is the Journal Review and Tim Timmons is the paper.
okay. Ellie, you'll remember that because you'll have it recorded, because I'll never remember that. Okay, thank you. I will do that, because any help would be appreciated. Clark's Plumbing, remember that? If you go back here and look, we got Klein Clark, Dwayne Clark, Easton or Keith Clark, and Paul Clark. I knew all of them, except, let's see, I didn't know Klein or Dwayne, or, yeah. No, I knew all of them except Klein. What a great family of Pipefitters. Crazy, so much fun. Oh my God, they were fun. Now they're all gone. Everyone. And I got the picture. Okay. Anybody recognize any of those guys? You talk about fun. And they're all gone, every one of them. This was their shop, right there. And I believe this is where the nut house was. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I think the nut house was right there on the corner of Green and Market. The owners were nuts. They call it the nut house. And I think this is probably went up right after they tore that down. Because looking at the cars, it looks like it's sixties or fifties.
I think
You
it
know what
was,
that was?
I think it was the Crawford Hotel,
I think the Crawford was,
because I've got
yeah,
that
on
picture.
Green.
I've got that picture in our collection. I'll have to look and see what it says.
Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nut house. Isn't that something they refer to as a nut house? What a great time to be alive. Anyway, I don't know what this is right here they're building. I can't make that sign out. Maybe somebody knows. You know, when in the fifties they built that. Now there's a rib house at one time.
I think it was the drive-through.
The bank. That's when they put the bank there? I
Yeah,
remember
because
that
that's where I
bank.
got those pictures from.
Okay, that's very possible.
Nut house is right there where the old bank drive-in and the restaurant was there too.
Yeah, but the CVS is there now.
Right.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
house is right there, that's two stories.
I get a grin every time I think about
Oh,
that,
yeah.
called the nut house. Let's get through here. Got about 15 minutes, that's probably right?
Yeah, about, because you wanted to answer questions.
Yeah. Labor practices, advocacy, well, I've already explained about losing the charter. Essential support. These are the charter members of Local 157, and that is one of the charter members, Mr. Louis Gents. He was still alive in the 50s. This was our business manager from 52 to 82, 30 years. Grover Osborne. We didn't think like that anymore for you, Grover. You know, that was Grover, and that's Mr. Gents right there.
You want to sign in?
This is an aerial view of our complex down there in Sealyville. This is our outside pavilion. This is a picnic in the 90s. Sometimes we had 4,000 people, but that's when they invited anybody. Then they stopped doing that, and you just had to be a member of the family. Then we get about 2,000. We used to have all our own rides. That slide right there was a great big slide. Liabilities, they just take all that down. You can't afford the insurance, which is horrible, because it was great. Now they rent, they have a company come in with these cheap little rides, you know. This was our stage, we're in the back of the property, way back here. It was great. They'd have entertainment outside. It depends on who's in charge of the union. That was when Grover was in. When Grover got out in 82, it just started to go like this. Because that's just a shell of itself now. They don't do anything back there. This is a training center here, but there's more buildings. This is taken in the 90s. This is the building I just showed you, office building. Let's see. Let's get going here. Growth and expansion. I told you we had 22 members at the height. Now we got about 1,700. Demand a skilled trade. Indianapolis, we were just talking a while ago. We're expecting $10 billion worth of growth. No, 10 billion. We're expecting in our jurisdiction 5 billion. We can't man that. And I don't want to be we can't woman that. We cannot get enough members to do that much work. We don't have it. And all the trades are like that. There's so much work now. I could go out tomorrow, get my scale, plus my pension, and work as long as I could. But I got artificial knees, I got arthritis in my back. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. But they've got so much work now, and a lot of retirees are coming out and working. Because I said be a free check. Anyway, jurisdiction, I tried to get a better picture of that, but Montgomery County, and then we go over into Illinois, down south and up north. Indiana, or 440 takes over when we get to Indiana. Functions, that's what we do, that's what we're responsible for. Types of project, we really let the residential through the years, the 60s and 70s, go to non-union. Just didn't want to do it, too lazy to get out there and do it. So they took over. Just in the last 15, 20 years, the local head and the union has emphasized the residential, and they've got a lot of it back. And that's part of the apprenticeship too, the training. I've probably installed 500 toilets in my life, and I've never worked on one. I don't wanna go back and work on a dirty toilet. That's residential, you know, and that's the attitude they had for years, but thank God, a lot of it's coming back now. How you doing, sir? Welcome.
Doing great.
All
I'm
right.
right being in your shirt, so.
Are you local, man?
No,
Oh, well,
just a supporter.
okay.
Rich.
Glad to hear it. We are mostly commercial instead of residential. Industrial projects. Safety, when I first got in, your safety was a rope around your waist with a rope hooked onto it, and a hook. If you fell, you break your back. That was our safety. Sometimes we didn't have to wear a hard hat. Now, oh my God. Now you've even got a strap hooked to each tool. So if you drop a tool when you're up high, it won't kill somebody. Your hard hat, your safety glasses, your high-vis clothing, your harnesses, your steel-toed shoes, they go all out. You gotta really get used to that on the job because it's a pain, but it's all for our safety. That's how it's improved over the years. Training, like I was saying, they were interviewing 82 apprentices today. They took in 150 last year, there's about 110 left. First year it weeds out once they find out what the work's like. And school, they gotta go to school for 5 years. A lot of them drop out. Plumbers. Ivy Tech. I taught, like I said, that for 7 years. That's part of it. And then they have the classroom CAD drawings. Heard that, CAD? It's computer-aided design. Instead, we used to study blueprints. They don't have blueprints anymore. But now, just about everything's a CAD drawing, so they have to learn how to do that. Plumbing code, the Indiana plumbing code, welding, any kind of pipe welding, TIG welding, MIG welding, stick welding, any kind of welding. They have to be certified in all those before they get out of apprenticeship. HVAC, instrumentation, drafting, blueprint reading, and design. These are the Ivy Tech courses I mentioned. Listen, did anybody know Kenny Newton? Nobody? He was a pipefitter, plumber. He's the one they finally signed my application, I finally got in. He was the first apprentice to win the state apprentice plumbing contest. And looking at his face, you get back there. Look at that look on his face. He was a little guy. He had that little guy, big man syndrome. If you look at that look on his face, that's exactly how Kenny was. And I got his, and you're welcome to come up here and look at it. Well, I've got that plaque right here. His son donated all the pictures and his plaque for the first one that won that apprenticeship. They quit that for a few years, and now it's back to Purdue. Let's see.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
How do you, what is the competition? I mean, what do they do?
Well, that's changed over the years. Like the plumbing test, you'll have to pour lead joints in cast iron pipe, like a bell and spigot like this. This wooden pipe, which they used to have, would go over there, and inside there, that's my monster. Inside there, you would have to pour lead, molten lead, and oakum to seal this old pipe. That's what they had to do. So when I was taking the test back in the 80s, you still have to do it. You don't have to do it anymore because rarely does a plumber have to lead a piece of pipe. But to answer your question, they'll run for the plumbing test, and for the contest, they'll give some measurements on some copper. And they're weird offsets. You got to put that together to fit in a template, to fit in there exactly, and then they'll test it, your joints, and it can't leak. That's your copper test. You have to design a 2-story building, all the plumbing, underground and above ground, water, waste, AC, everything. You have to design that.
Is this in days, or is this
Oh, no.
hours?
No. Oh, yeah, one day. Yeah, and when I say design, you already have the drawing. You just got to draw in all the pipe. But yeah, it's a day. And it's other apprentices all over the state. They started in local, and we've had it in our local several years. You start at local, through local union, your apprentice, you win that. A welder, a pipe fitter, a plumber, and an HVAC. Then they'll go to maybe an area, bigger area, not the state yet, and they climb up until they get to the state. And then they'll have a one-day contest with the state, and if they win that, make a big deal out of it. Did that explain?
Yep, everybody wants them, right?
Say again?
Everyone wants them to work for them.
Oh, yeah, then, especially the welders. You can get a 4th-year apprentice to win a welding test. That's tough. And when they go on to start working, everybody wants one of their jobs. Same with the plumber, or all of it, because they know what they're doing, and they proved it. What I do with my remote. Oh, here we go. Let's see, let's keep going. That was our first apprentice building. That is on training. I want to skip to the last here, the time we have left. Well, benefits, of course, is the pay. That's about it. It's leadership. Oh, let's go. Career advancement. You do have career advancement as far as you can be a foreman, area foreman, superintendent. You can keep going up, or you can start as an officer, run for election in the union. And they got a great retirement because they got the retirement for pipefitter or plumber, then they got a retirement for the officers. So they stay in there as long as they can. So there is advancement. Let's see. Now, this goes with community involvement. Some of these pictures are kind of old, but I found a lot of them, what we are involved with for the community. Cerebral palsy, that's a low one. I put that in there because Grover's in there. Muscular dystrophy, United Way, fight against cancer. These are all that are union volunteers for these different. March of Dimes, Dollars Against Diabetes. We used to be able to stand at the intersection down there at South Washington Boulevard and collect for. They don't let us do that anymore. Used to do it in Lafayette too. I don't know if they do it up there anymore or not. Boy Scouts, we give to Boy Scouts, and we give to Habitat for Humanity, build houses. Scholarships, that's an old picture, but they have a lot of scholarships for members' sons or daughters. And build ramps, handicap ramps. This is for, where is it? Vermilion County. But there's one in Danville too. Members get together and they build ramps for the handicapped in their houses. So as far as community, they're helping all the time. There's a lot of volunteers of our local members. They have that spirit in them that they want to volunteer and help each other. I think that's about, now, you can go on, created a 750-page history ebook of our local for our anniversary. You can get that online at our website. I'll give you the address here. Is it back there? Yeah, it's there on the bottom, ualocal157.org. When you get that and go to that, this is the page that's what it'll look like. You go up here on 125th history, and you'll go to this page here. This, on the top, is this book that we had professionally made from a company that does this for unions all over the country on their anniversaries. They used a lot of my research in here. It's got a lot of good pictures. If you ever want one of those, I've got about 50 of them down there. I forgot to get them today. But I'll make those available at the library if you want one of those. That is at the top. This right here are the 3 parts of the book I wrote. These are the minute books, like this one, starting in 1896. So you can read, I scanned every page of those. You can go through there and look at those, if you're interested. The members like that, because they can go back, it's kind of interesting. Okay? Want any more? That's all I got. Questions? Yes?
Can you take a person right out of high school?
Yep.
Can you
You have to have a high school diploma.
Could you maybe try to walk us through the progression and how long in each stage and where they would do this as they begin and until they end up
Through the apprenticeship?
to finishing the apprenticeship?
Okay, now it's a little different. Usually, you could go to work Well, when I was first started, you were called probationary apprentice. You had 6 months, you weren't even a member, but you could work. Now, they don't have probationary apprentices. You start out, there's third-year apprentices working down south on a big job, running work, because they went through a welding course, because they're so short on welders. What do you call it? It's fast. Accelerated. That's exactly what they got. And they're starting them out at journeyman wages, and some of them are running work. Now, in my day, an apprentice did not run work. That's what they are, they're there to learn. Well, they call them pups. But now it's changed. But they can start in right when they get in the local. They're always working with the journeyman. They're never supposed to work alone. Sometimes that happens to them. Then they advance by year, and they start out at 45%, and then they go up about 10%, I think, each year. That depends on the job they're on, what they're working on, but they'll always be with a journeyman. And it talks about mentors. We did have a mentorship for a while, but all it is you're a journeyman, you're working with a journeyman.
Does the apprenticeship always last 5 years?
Yeah, and I lucked out because they were short on welders, and I went 4 years. They dropped it down to 4 years for 5 years. So I went through it for 4 years, and then they went back to 5 years. But it's always been, those has been 5 years.
You mentioned some of the class from last year dropped out, and you mentioned they have to go to school for apparently during these 5 years. Can you?
Usually 2 nights a week.
Yeah, how much of what kind of school?
Classroom and laboratory. If you're welding, they've got a welding school with welding booths and welding instructors where they start out in the basics. It's always pipe. Now, at Ivy Tech, I took some of my welding at Ivy Tech because we just taken in 240, and it was over there on State Street, I think, by the railroad, and the train was about this far from the back of the building. So we didn't have much of a school. So we took it at Ivy Tech that first year, and we welded on the flat plate to start with. They don't do that at the school. We got that there. So they're there, and plus they have journeyman upgrade. After you're out, and you want to upgrade to a new technique, you go back there, it's free. You want to learn all that for nothing. So as far as where they advance and how their classes, they'll have class like Lafayette. We have a hall in Lafayette that used to be 240. They built a new hall over off Teal Road, and they have a big school up there, classroom and lab for welding. It's beautiful up there. So they do the same thing as we do down Terre Haute at that. But go out to the laboratory. If you have HVAC, you've got a big setup for air conditioning and mop boilers and all kinds of things. If they can work on there, that matches what they're going to see out in the field. Plumbing, the same thing with that. There's a room down Terre Haute that has mocked up toilets, bathrooms where you can see the walls. 440, they built a new hall 5 years ago. It's amazing. When you walk in, they've got a big wall, plexiglass, that's got the back of the big bathroom. All the plumbing and everything's exposed through that glass. And that's what you see. Then you go to the bathroom, it's a regular bathroom. That's the kind of stuff you have in the hall for the school. HVAC, they've got the boilers, what else? Copper. So they have a classroom, laboratory, and in the field. That's the training.
Once you attain being a journeyman, and you want to move to a different area, does the local in that other area have to accept you?
If you go to another jurisdiction, voluntarily, like if there's not enough work in our jurisdiction, it's called a travel. You travel to another jurisdiction. Yes, they have to accept you, and they have to have a call out for fitters or plumbers or welders before you go over. But you can go work in any other jurisdiction, any other local, as long as they're asking for something. If you go there and ask, well, if there's work, you can work there, yeah. But you have to have permission from our local and their local.
So for a young person now, thinking about a career, some of them apparently they were programmed to want to go to college, but now they're hearing that's not all that it's cracked up to be once the government is wanting those loans repaid. They're reconsidering that, I'm sure, but I'm wondering mobility throughout the whole country. If you get trained, say, here or in 157, and become journeyman, can you pretty much, over a short period of time, count on being able to move pretty well anywhere in the country? contractor you might want to sell. That would be a big.
Still in that local, in our local. But you can clear into another local if you worked in that area 3 years. If you worked in their jurisdiction 3 years, and they'll let you, you can clear into that local and become a member of that local.
Because not every job has that mobility. And that would be a big factor in attracting new recruits, I would think.
What do you mean not every job has a mobility? You mean if you're on a job, you gotta stay there on that
In
job?
certain occupations, you kind of establish a clientele locally.
Ah,
Like if you're an insurance agent.
oh yeah, sure, sure,
Or you're a lawyer.
yeah.
You kind of put down roots, but if you're a good journeyman with a good reputation at your job, I wonder, can you pretty much go anywhere you want now?
Depends on the journeymen that have worked before you in that jurisdiction. If they've got a good name, if they've come to work on time, if they're not making trouble, they're not drunk on the job, you're gonna have a lot better chance of getting on that than you would, and that happened. We had that happen. Where is it, down south? Yeah.
I got a question. First, I apologize if this is retreading material that you already spoke earlier. I wasn't able to be here earlier. I'm very interested in labor history, especially in Indiana. And I've heard anecdotally from former Donnelly's workers that unionization efforts were suppressed here in this county. And in general, Indiana has a long history of not being terribly friendly to labor unions. And so I am very interested in that history in particular, and I know that the right to work laws in 2005 under Mitch Daniels' administration were not terribly good for unions. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to what you know of local union suppressing efforts.
The Chamber of Commerce used to advertise that they were non-union, they were anti-union, to attract businesses to go down. They would advertise that years ago. That's how blatant they are. But now, you've heard this before, I'm sure, but if you're not in a union, you're working in a factory or something, and they're treating you really well, and you have good benefits, why? Why do they do that? It's not out of the kindness of their heart, believe me. They don't want organized labor in there. So organized labor is actually affecting them because the owner does not want a union in there. If you think you're being treated so great by the employer, start to organize. See how they treat you then, like you said. Donnelly's, any place, and that's totally illegal to, what's the word I'm looking for? To do anything that would work against the employees having a union. That includes taking something off the bulletin board that's advertising for a meeting. You can't take that off the bulletin board. Thing is, we don't prosecute a lot. But this county, especially, is anti-union. Now, I say that because I know. I've been around here most of my life. They have union jobs because they have to. The ones that they have. A union, our building trades, is a pool of trained workers. You've got, just the Pipefitter and ours, you've got 1,700 available, trained, well-trained workers to get workers from that pool to build this factory, to build this powerhouse, to build this school. Non-union, most of the non-union don't have that pool. Now they do have, there are some non-union outfits that train, that have the same similar schooling like we have. And there's a lot of them that are just as good as union Pipefitters, union plumbers. They've got to have their work too, just like we do. Yes?
We're going to have to end this.
Well, anytime you want to come look at the stuff up front, feel free. I'll explain what it is, and I appreciate your attention. Okay.